Hi guys, I'm Mike and this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to a new series that we are starting today, where we kind of talk to F1 fans around the world, whether that be just kind of normal fans, fellow YouTubers or podcasters as well. And today we have Mark from Australia.
Great to be on the show again. Seems like you start away with as far away from home as possible.
I thought it was a good way to start. Start really far away and then kind of work our way back to the UK. But for today's topic, so basically the idea of this is we'll get fans on to talk about certain topics within F1. And with obviously Red Bull doing reasonably well in the back end of this season as they tend to, and obviously Max Verstappen needing to win next year to become the youngest ever Formula 1 world champion, we thought we'd discuss, can Red Bull actually challenge and get the title next year, and then a kind of subtopic within it of Honda and whether their continued involvement will come in the sport, and maybe looking at creating another works team again. But yeah, so first off, we'll get stuck in. Mark, do you think Red Bull can build a championship winning car next year?
No.
Well, there you go. That's the end of the podcast. All right. Cheers for that.
Sorry, but yeah, you'd have to be absolutely raving mad to think that they're even a shot next year. I mean, for them to be a shot, basically the teams would have to just say, "Oh no, fuck it, we'll miss developing next year. We'll just all focus on 2021." But Red Bull's already said they're focusing heavily on 2021, and chances are most teams are as well. So I think we're going to see very similar standings to this year, but maybe third to fifth even tighter.
I'd be inclined to agree with that, because McLaren and Renault definitely are wanting to close the gap before the 2021 rules come in. With Red Bull, look, Max Verstappen, he is one of the best drivers on the grid, and he's had a lot of experience within the grid, and he's proven at times he's well and truly outdriven the car and performance he's got. So maybe they don't have to build a car as good as Mercedes, but just be close to where Mercedes are, and he might be able to get enough points. And if Ferrari build a decent car, then the teams might take each other enough points off each other for him to stand a shot probably next year. But can they build the best car? Yeah, I know.
That's a lot of it.
But isn't every season ifs unless you get to the dominance of an era like a Mercedes or Red Bull had in the past, or Ferrari? Yeah, there's a lot of ifs when chasing.
I mean, lots of people are saying that Honda is better than Renault. They're so much better than Red Bull's so much better than they were last year, but they're not. They've had less wins, less podiums, they're on less points, and arguably, most of their wins have been gifted to them.
Yeah, I mean, they fought it. I mean, it's, whether you kind of... Charles didn't defend as hard as he would do now in Austria. Obviously, Hockenheim Max managed to survive the carnage better than everybody else. And Brazil for me it was a good race from Red Bull. Obviously, Mercedes' performance was affected by the altitude, and then obviously the pit strategy of Lewis Hamilton, or lack of one. So yes, they're benefited and not kind of necessarily dominated, but has any team really dominated other than Mercedes this year? Even in Ferrari's victories, I would say
Ferrari. If the season started in Spa, I would say Ferrari and Mercedes have dominated.
Yes, in terms of it, but obviously still Ferrari, their wins. Singapore was probably their most dominant win.
If they didn't have a rare engine failure in Bahrain, you would say that's their most dominant win.
Yeah, but they did. But yes.
Which is incredibly rare from Ferrari. Their engines don't normally fail.
No, you're very right. Well, it's certainly not in this modern era.
No, not in the modern era. I'll classify it because I know that will be slaughtered in the comments for saying that. In the modern era.
Exactly. Because obviously, yeah, they had massive reliability issues in the past.
Yes.
I just think, have Red Bull... Obviously, Red Bull always used to produce the best aero package out of the top three. And it was just their power-wise...
Their tricks, and I think they've lost their huge aero advantage they once had, as shown in Monaco and Mexico.
Yeah. Well, and Singapore.
They've lost their aero advantage they once had.
Here's a question for you. Obviously, Adrian Newey is one of the best technical directors and aerodynamicists to have graced the sport, but he's been at Red Bull the longest that he's ever been anywhere in his career, I believe, because he's been there pretty much since 2007-8, hasn't he?
Yeah, I would argue that's their problem. Adrian Newey likes to take breaks. He likes to go to other things, have changes of environments. He doesn't like a stale environment, and we can see that already. He's probably focused more on designing new Aston Martins than working on the F1 car.
Yeah, it just feels he's stagnated, and obviously with all the problems they had with Renault, because the Renault engine probably still was capable of winning championships if it had stayed working. Its biggest issue was its reliability.
This year, Red Bull could have made a challenge for second if they had the Renault engine.
It's certainly been a lot better this year, but I think, well, as much as obviously Alonso's criticised for his GP2 comments for burning bridges with Honda, Max and Christian Horner themselves certainly burnt relationships with Renault.
I think they have to be careful. I think if they could have a Ferrari or Mercedes engine, they'd be very critical of Honda right now.
Yeah.
I think they're stuck with Honda and they're biting their tongues.
I think, yeah, they've put themselves in this situation, and the worst situation for them would be if Honda leaves.
Now, on the whole Honda leaving, I think they could leave. Very possible, because I think they want to have their own team. The way they talk about, we're looking at the budget, we're looking at all this, it almost seems like they want to enter the sport for themselves.
Well, yeah, because it seems confusing, doesn't it? Because this story never goes away. And I don't know if it's just they need a story for a day, so they keep recycling the old piece. But it just always doesn't drop out of the news line. It'll be every couple of weeks, every month or so, you'll hear another story of Honda considering, or this victory was important for convincing Honda to stay. And like going, well, this is the best season Honda have had since their return to F1. So why would now, when they're getting success, it be an issue, unless, like you said, something in them wanting their own team, wanting a Japanese driver, because obviously they have some Japanese drivers within Red Bull Academy. Alpha Tauri is already starting to distance itself a little bit more from its sister team now. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
That's the team I think they could buy. That's the team I think Honda could buy. They seem more attached to Toro Rosso than they do Red Bull. It almost seems like they focus more on Toro Rosso than Red Bull. I think their senior engine developer is still in the Toro Rosso garage.
Is he? Well, obviously Toro Rosso were the ones who gave them the platform after, obviously, the McLaren debacle. And maybe they were just like, well, Red Bull didn't back us from the start. It's been, although they're linked, we were used as trial with Toro Rosso, and Toro Rosso have given us everything, can all support data. And at times they've run as test dummies for Red Bull, haven't they, in terms of running upgrades and stuff.
But I would not be surprised if in 2021 Alpha Tauri or Toro Rosso disappears, and it becomes Honda F1.
Which would be crazy, wouldn't it? Because obviously Mercedes in their current format were technically along the chain line the old Honda team, weren't they?
I believe they were.
Because it was Honda, and then they pulled out, and it turned into Brawn GP, didn't it? And then obviously Brawn GP was brought by Mercedes, so...
Yeah, but no, it would be... I would not put it past Honda to enter into F1 and replace Toro Rosso, and Red Bull goes back to being a full, customer, more than they already are.
Yeah. The problem is obviously, it would depend if Honda can maintain the relationship. Because obviously where Renault and Honda and Red Bull massively fell out was that Renault would go, here's an engine, deal with it. And Red Bull wanted to be involved in the development side of things more, didn't they? I believe. I mean, that's at least what Horner was pushing.
I said I think they're going to lose that again.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as someone becomes a works team, obviously the priority then becomes the works team, and it doesn't look good on them if the people they're providing the engine for are outperforming them. I mean, obviously it looks good for the engine, but then it makes the rest of their team look incompetent.
Yeah.
So...
But no. I think Red Bull's days in F1 could be numbered unless they convince Aston Martin to enter the sport.
Well, that's another thing, isn't it? Because Red Bull have spoken about, and before the win in Austria, they were saying they were considering their involvement in the sport. There's a lot of these. Obviously, Renault have done it a lot this year. Honda have done it a lot with the engine. Red Bull have done it. Does it?
To be fair to Renault, I don't think they've done it themselves. It's been outside media reporting on it.
Well, yeah. That's what I mean. But do these things and little stories get dropped in almost to kind of go, oh, we can't lose Renault, we can't lose Red Bull, and then they're like, use it to go and take to boardrooms and say, see, people want us in the sport. Something, we're a popular brand or something.
Well, I think the whole Renault leaving F1 has been the most malicious of the news stories because it's never been said by anyone in the team, and everything points towards it staying with long-term contracts, upgrades to the facilities. It's all stuff where you think if it was happening, the board would have said no to this stuff.
You would have seen a steady decline in investment of almost preparing to pull out.
A massive increase in long-term contracts being signed.
Because that literally would be pissing money down a drain.
Yes, and so that's why I think that's been the most malicious of the stories. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. Red Bull and Honda, it's been from themselves, isn't it?
Yes, it's been from themselves. Well, to be fair to Red Bull, it's mainly been said by their crazy old man they keep in the garage.
Very true, Helmet. But...
I think he's damaged Red Bull more than any other person in their team. He is...
Well, he certainly damaged relationships because, obviously, what he did to Daniel Kvyat, I think, has sabotaged him in his second half of the season. Because Daniel was like, I've worked hard, I've come back, I had a year with Ferrari test driving.
Teammates.
I'm going to prove myself. And then to not even be in the running, and to be kind of said that he's not in the running, and to kind of be publicly criticised by saying, it's a bit like Horner after Brazil. Very strange to me. I mean, those comments suggest to me that they are very confident on keeping Max Verstappen long term so that Pierre Gasly won't go back. Because the way that they've come out and tried to downplay his achievement since Brazil has been really strange for me.
I find Red Bull very hard to like as a team, mainly because of Helmut Marko and bits of Christian Horner.
They're certainly controversial characters.
We deserve to still be at the top. We 9-time constructors champions.
Yeah,
They just come off as they come off almost petty sometimes.
Yeah, there's almost a bitterness to it, and I think after getting a taste of success, and like they did, and obviously 2010 to 2013, it was hugely impressive from Red Bull, massive, and obviously they in that time expanded their fan base exponentially. It was like a huge increase in support and thing, but they've just never quite got the hybrid era right. And whether that be and it's been a combination of their aero package and obviously the Renault engine not being right.
I would also say a bit of mismanagement on the driver's side as well.
Between Ricciardo and Max?
Yeah, and say that.
Well, obviously, they didn't do enough to make Ricciardo feel loved.
No, and he was arguably on the same level. He was on the same level as Max.
Well, you can argue that Red Bull would have been a lot better off and probably second in the constructors if they've had Daniel Ricciardo this year.
Well, I wouldn't say second.
I
would say they may be on the same points as they were last year, but I wouldn't say second.
They might have been. I know obviously Ferrari have done well in the second half of the season, but remember all those opportunities where Pierre Gasly was so far off the pace. You would have imagined Ricciardo to be getting better results and better points finishes, and how Ferrari were mucking a lot of things up in that period.
I just don't. I mean, what is it? It's nearly 100 points between Ferrari and Red Bull.
Yeah, but then you could maybe argue that with the pressure of Red Bull maybe putting on, being closer or even ahead going into the summer break, that they might have crumbled a little bit more. Well, obviously, once they won Spa and Monza, it was pretty much, and then Singapore, Red Bull could write it off, especially with Max Verstappen retiring in Spa. Was it Monza as well? Did he? Yeah. Well, he didn't retire, but
it was Spa. He fucked his race.
Yeah, he didn't do well in Spa.
He fucked his race. It was his own fault. I mean, I was very critical of that when it happened.
Yeah.
Where he positioned his car, if he didn't manage to overtake Kimi Räikkönen, he would have had to give the position back anyway.
Exactly.
Off the track.
Yeah.
And then he proceeded to accelerate up Eau Rouge with a broken steering arm after what happened the day before. It seemed like Mad Max was back, and he threw caution to the wind and was like, yeah.
It was confusing why he made such a move in there, because obviously up until that stage he was coming off 21 top 5 consecutive finishes, and he had just been so much more mature, so much sensible. His overtaking was aggressive but
fair.
Measured. Yeah. Like,
well, other than Austria, which I'd argue
I thought it was fair. I don't mind it. I know the squeeze there, and that's why I thought obviously Leclerc's one in Monza was fair as well. I just thought it was racing. Leclerc was naive. Was naive in Austria. It's what we kind of want to see, people battling at the top. No one was really endangered in the situation, and you know, Leclerc since then, it's made Leclerc a better driver. So
yeah, but what Max did in Spa, now that was dangerous.
Yeah, that was
stupidly dangerous, I would argue.
Well, yes, and you've seen it from a couple of the top drivers this year. Well, obviously Sebastian Vettel in what he did in Monza on the track, and then you've seen.
I wouldn't say what Vettel did was as dangerous. It was slower speed, and you could also argue he couldn't see. But Max, I mean, he would know that his steering wasn't right, and speeding up Eau Rouge. If he did take out Kimi Räikkönen again with that accident instead of just hitting him in the rear, I would have given him a race ban.
It was probably worthy of it if it had been the case, but Obviously, he had that blip through his season, and now he does seem to be, with the last, I'd say since Mexico onwards, I mean, we've only had 2 races, haven't we, since Mexico, but the last couple of races he's regained things with, obviously Austin, he had a good race, and obviously a very good race in Brazil that he drove, was dominant from start to finish.
But if he can have those periods and then also go back to what he is like, what's to say that he won't do that again next year, where he'll have a great run, then all of a sudden one race he'll ruin it for himself for the next couple races.
Well, let's look at it. He had 21 consecutive top 5 finishes. So now he's had 2 consecutive top 5 finishes. And you could say that it starts now. So say he goes on a similar run of 4 next season. That would take him up until around about the Austin, Brazil race from there. And if he's then in a sniff of a title next year, say Red Bull have got things together in there.
That's when you don't want to be suffing up.
Well, no, but would you say, because in Spa he was so far, obviously people had hyped it up over the summer of Max has a sniff of a chance to get Lewis, and he's like, I've got to make a statement at Spa, and he went too far. Where if he was in with a shot at the title, yes, he'd feel he'd need to make a statement, but with more on the line, do you think he would be able to control it better?
We don't know. He's never been in that position, and he still has a tendency to ruin things for himself.
He does, but
when pressure gets to that stage.
But I think this season is another big learning curve for him, and we could see an even better Max Verstappen next year. Because out of the young challengers, Charles Leclerc is obviously a fantastic talent, and I think he will go from there. Lando Norris, George Russell, Albon and Pierre Gasly are not in machinery to challenge for a title. Well, Charles Leclerc is.
Lando Norris not yet.
Yeah.
McLaren is looking very good.
And Charles Leclerc, I would say, he would lose out on the experience that Max does have, because will it be the start of his 6th season in F1 next year?
5th, I think.
And I think this one was his 5th.
Hang on. Joined Red Bull in 2016. 2017, 2018, 2019. Hang on. 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. Yeah, 6th season next year.
Yeah, which I just think that experience and situations that have arisen, inter-team battles that he's got through, and yeah, I think he's certainly the better racer on track as well over Leclerc currently. Leclerc obviously is still learning, and he's only had 1 season in a big team.
I would say Leclerc's a better package in whole.
I think long term, yes, but I think he's proven still at stages this year that he has lots of learning to do, and I would say since winning in Monza, he's been a little bit off the boil.
Well, I think some of the things you can't blame him for. Singapore, he was screwed out of the win.
Yes and no. Yes.
I would say yes.
I would say yes, but then obviously Sebastian Vettel did put in a fantastic lap. And then Charles Leclerc, rather than going out and matching Vettel, moaned about it more than he should have done. With Suzuka, obviously, a little bit of unlucky, because obviously following the wake of Vettel...
I still call that a racing incident.
What? I thought so. But,
yeah. But it was Suzuka, so I have my own suspicions about that, especially some of the other things that seem to favour Honda-powered cars.
Yeah.
The incident with Lando Norris, that should have been a penalty.
Yeah.
Just did seem very favoured.
Yeah. But going back to Max, I just think those incidents, he is the best positioned, I think, to take the title from Lewis next year. It is dependent on Red Bull. Can they produce a car? On recent evidence, no. Will Honda engine be ready to compete with Ferrari and Mercedes across the whole season? unlikely, but it could still happen. But like you said at the start, when I was going through all the
Max to win
ifs,
the championship, he'll need a 2010 repeat of the craziness of a crazy season
yeah,
going down. He'll need 2010 to happen. 2010 times 2, actually, for it to even be likely. Right now, I mean, I'd still put him maybe 4th in the race for the title. Next year, still below both Mercedes drivers and Charles, but ahead of Vettel.
I would put him ahead of Charles because I just think Ferrari will take too many points off each other. Bottas has to be second because he's in the car that's dominated for the majority of the last decade. So that would be on that aspect. But like I said, there are a lot of ifs that happen, and Verstappen would need to have an Alonso-esque season in 2010-2012, taking the third best car on the grid to challenge him for the title. Apart from, he's not going up against yet to be champion, and then a young champion chasing his third title. He's going up against Lewis Hamilton, one of the best drivers in the sport, chasing history of equaling Michael Schumacher's 7 Drivers' World titles. So that in itself is an incredible challenge to overcome. It is the third best car on the grid.
But I just don't see it happening.
I think it's much.
I'd love to see another driver in the race, probably, but I don't see it happening.
I'd be inclined to agree with you. I'd be sceptical of their chances just on current evidence. You have to suggest they've actually finished other seasons in recent years stronger than what they've done this year and still not been at it. Red Bull always seem to be playing catch up, and you can't play catch up against a team of Mercedes standard, even if you do have a driver the quality of Max Verstappen.
I know. I would love it to happen, but not this year. Maybe with the reg changes in 2021, but even then. Yeah, but no, Ferrari and Mercedes will be on top in 2021. Ferrari's not going to get embarrassed like they were in the previous reg changes. And I also think that Red Bull is going to have to worry about both McLaren and Renault in 2021, and possibly even in 2020.
I think the gap is too big to bridge in 2020, but the way McLaren have been improving and the way that Renault are putting their backroom staff behind the scenes, as well as obviously going with Ocon and Ricciardo having a season settled in Renault, you certainly can see them seriously pushing Red Bull if Honda doesn't keep up the improvement rate,
Yeah.
or they don't produce an aero package that's been as good as the past.
Yeah, I haven't heard much from McLaren, but it seems like Renault's put a lot of staff in and put a lot of investment ready for 2021 with heaps of chassis and aero department reworks.
Well, I think that's what McLaren did last year.
Yeah.
And now everything's in place. Now they're just improving the facilities, like obviously their new wind tunnel that they're building to improve things, which obviously is a massive investment considering that the 2021 regs are limiting wind tunnel use. I presume it's going to be state of the art, so that the limited time they do get in the wind tunnel, they're going to get really great data from it.
Yeah. But no, 2021 could be one of the best seasons in F1 yet, or one of the worst, depending on how teams focus on it.
Yeah. Depending how much it mix up the grid. But we'll only ever know on that one until it happens. But I think that's probably quite a good way to round off. I mean, I think I did try to be devil's advocate for the majority of it, trying to say, yeah, Red Bull might have a chance. and stuff, but I think we're both probably in agreement that it seems unlikely, however much F1 fans and Red Bull and Max fans would hope, it just on recent evidence seems unlikely that suddenly they can just out of the blue, with no major rule regulation changes or anything like that, to kind of get on top of whether they can bridge that gap.
Yeah. I feel, I'm actually, I'm excited most for in 2020. Not the championship, not any of that. The silly season.
I mean, yeah, the driver merry-go-round in 2021. Next summer's going to be mental. It's going to be crazy because obviously Nico will be thrown back into it, Alonso will be thrown back into it, and those are just guys outside of it. Then
chances are both Mick Schumacher's going to be thrown in on it.
Yeah.
There's no doubting that he will be thrown in on it.
He will be thrown in on it. Depending on how well Schwartzman does, he'll be thrown in on it. Depending on how well
Vips could be thrown in on it.
Yeah, if he gets the super license points. Depending on whether they think about Formula E guys, someone like if Stoffel Van Dorn does really well.
No, Stoffel Van Dorn's made it clear he doesn't want to go back into Formula One. He's chucked a huge hissy fit over it.
Well,
did you not see?
I did see him complaining about McLaren giving everything to Alonso and stuff like that.
And also saying Formula One is boring. It's manufactured racing. It's all politics and all that. Just having a whinge.
So maybe not Stoffel then. But some cases in Formula E maybe. But there'll be loads of drivers thrown into it.
Chances are Alonso is going to be thrown in on the merry-go-round.
He definitely will.
I'm surprised Alonso hasn't gone to Formula E. That's what surprised me most.
Well, he's chasing prestigious things at the moment, isn't he? Like, he's obviously chasing IndyCar, and the rally thing is obviously it's a well-renowned thing, the Dakar Rally. If you win the Formula E Championship at the moment, as harsh as it is to like the Jean-Eric Verne and the Lucas de Grassi and stuff like that who've been champions, nobody's going wow at the moment.
It's going to sound awful to the Formula E champions, but I think the Formula 2 championship is more prestigious.
In terms of what it can get you, currently, yes. But that's only because of history, and you can't buy or invest in history. You only get that from competing in a long time. And Formula E has the massive disadvantage that so many of these racing series have been going for years and decades.
I want to like Formula E, I really do. The racing is great, but fucking fan boost and other shit like that makes me hate it.
It feels a bit gimmicky, but we're getting sidetracked. We're getting away from the point. So, Red Bull, unlikely for next year.
To be honest, no and no.
Yeah. No and no. And will Honda bring in a manufacturer team in 2021?
I think yes.
The way they're talking about things and the way that they've got a few Japanese juniors in the Red Bull program, but could easily kind of be brought in to that Honda team. Yeah, I think
yes.
Yeah, that has, strangely enough, that seems a lot more plausible than Red Bull putting a serious title challenge together next year, which is a bit sad to say, but
although they're in Red Bull livery cards, the Red Bull juniors that are Japanese and are tied to Honda, they're not normally called Red Bull juniors, they're called Honda juniors.
Are they? Okay.
Yes.
So that is interesting.
I mean, Matsushita is known as a Honda junior. That's what all the commentators refer to him as. Nobuharu Matsushita, the Honda junior.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's even more.
That's the type of thing exactly that.
To the sport for me.
Yeah, that certainly does. But yeah, that is that, guys. That has been a good debate with you, Mark. Thank you for coming on as always. But guys, in the comments below, comment what you think. Do you think Red Bull can seriously challenge for the title next year with Max Verstappen? Do you think they're capable of building a car? Do you think Honda will re-enter the sport as a works team in 2021? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, if you did like it, let us know. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Click that bell notification and you can keep up to date with all the latest content and more ones in the series just like this. I think we've got 5 episodes in the first part of this series of getting F1 fans around the world, so that's good. I'll drop you who are going in later on. But yeah, guys, for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.